G'day everybody. I want to talk about psychology in human balance. Right? Now, with this psychology, it's the best of healing. Everyone says, I want to help, I want to become a healer, and I always hear when they say that, that they want to be a doctor, right? They believe with movies and all that kind of stuff that healers are doctors. Healers are definitely doctors. They're one point of healing. Right? But when it comes to the healing scale, so say this is a healing scale right here, right? A doctor is pretty important. We'll say the head is the doctor. But psychology, if you know it right and get it right, which is why we use Bible and religion, you don't need the doctor so much, right? So psychology, mental problems and how to get things right, outbeats doctors if you get it right. If you don't, it can become your worst nightmare, as they will psychology, the wrong thing, the bad apple. Right? Psychology is education in a way. The good apple, good psychology, bad apple, bad psychology. The outcome will show worldwide or countrywide of that psychology. Okay? Simple as that. So healers from the top would be like the Bible, right? Psychology. Because psychology saves a lot of the necessary doctors. Bad psychology, thinking you might need more doctors to fix things, causes what? Not good psychology, right? So I want to talk about humans and how they act, and psychology, and perception, right? Definitely perception from, have you ever heard of why people don't like geeks? Geeks will go, oh, I'm not doing this, I'm not going over there. If this is going to happen, they're a bit like a lefty. They perceive too much. And that perceiving helps them decide a stupid answer a lot of times because of the perceiving. But they also become what they are. Cowards. Geekily. You know those geeks. With their glasses. What we advertise. Try to give you an example. Best way to give an example is what people see mostly. Right? Now, the geek doesn't need to be a geek. The geek turns out to be the geek because of the way he lives. He becomes a hermit. He reads too much instead of going out and falling over and toughening his body. And so they also become weak. So when they get bullied, it really hurts. And they don't like it as they're weak, as earlier things happened earlier they should have had beforehand. And they become what they are. Right? So they use their brain to get money, to bully back, right? Have you seen that show where, what's it called, American Dad, where he tries to teach his son that he should be tough, and then he teaches his dad back that you don't need to just be tough, you can also be smart, right? And get someone else who's tougher to beat you up, right? That's smart, isn't it? Right? So you don't need to be tough, but if you didn't have that money and that other person, which sometimes does happen, you can be all by yourself, then he's not too smart, where his dad's help could help him to also know how to defend yourself. But he'd rather show a point of, no, I don't need your dad in that show, and just get his dad beaten up because his dad gets beaten up, to show his point that he can be tough, right? With money. But he got lucky as well. Like I said, if he didn't, he's got his smarts. He didn't show how he could beat him up himself with his smarts, be like a Batman, right? Make up some tools to help beat up someone, right? And so, well, let's get back to psychology. And psychology for the balls. So I'm pretty crazy talking about this type of psychology too, everyone. I'm living in Australia, right? And Australia, they need a lot of that psychology, as they believe that they need a lot of this, a lot of them, is the outcome of fixing their problems. And they also need the leader down here that just uses credit card and laws to fix things, right? And their class is a healer, right? So they're the leaders right here. So they're lower than doctors in outcomes of truth and succeeding on what they do, right? And so there's the leaders, which is no good, because the leaders are actually meant to be up here or working with these to make the right decisions. Otherwise, they wouldn't be a leader, because these guys will take it. You know what I mean? And sometimes these guys don't always want to do it. They'd rather work and do other things, give advice and stuff like that, instead of being the actual leader. Right? That's why we have help. Because sometimes they've got other things to do than to just lead. But they know how to do it. Some people know how to do things, but they've got something else bigger to do, or what they believe is bigger or better for them, right? And so when it comes to how do we deal with all these lefties problems, we got Donald Trump right now going, all right, you know how I'm going to fix this? This is a little bit like this kind of thing. And that's when it comes back to psychology and the leader, as these people are meant to be up here. But they do actions where they stay down here in a lot of countries, even worse in a lot of countries, right? But sometimes they get up here, they use this to get there, which is sad. But once they get up here, they believe they can be there. They can be here if they want. They can be over here, right? Because they're meant to be up here, right? In their job. Now, this job is meant to be in all these fields as well. That keeps them to be there. So when they're there, they've got that in there. I hope I'm trying to get it as basic as possible for you, because I'm about to start the next part, which is not going to be good for lefties and for bullies and stuff like that. They're going to try to use this, right, as they got up here on. They use the bad apple. But if they can get to this position with up there, that bad apple, they get what they want, right? And you get all the problems. So up here you want the good apple, so you get less problems of all here, because if you get the bad one, you got to think you're going to need all these things that apparently fix problems, but that's only because up here is failing. You see? That's why I always say go up higher in a lot of things. And think about it, and time in areas, and life is precious, and we all know that. Use these scripts, right? Religion's about here, so we got religion at the top here, between, right? They got power, but they don't use it, and all these things. Right? I don't want to really talk about it at the moment, because religion up here, it's why they're sort of there. Right? They're like healers. They can have power like the leaders, but they don't have to, so their job's a bit easier, right? But they're also failing, right? Because of what they do. So they're meant to fix problems. So when you're these type of people, these people save having heaps of these and these. Right? That's why they're there. But if they fail, you're going to get more of this and this issues as well. You'll find that'll be happening while they're there, because they're actually meant to be right here with these guys, right? All three of them, and other areas like police force, other areas. They're all meant to look up to an area. But if an area is doing a certain thing, they would follow the same suit. Like a paramount of smoker, get more likely smoke, right? As that's what they're doing. So these here will create laws to create problems that they shouldn't. That they're bothering up here. See, the Lord is meant to be higher as they speak than these guys, right? And they are, but then these guys have got the power over these guys. So that doesn't really make sense. And that's because this guy up here allowed this game to play, as it's the bad apple. And that's its heart. That's how it functions. But if it was a good apple, you would have less chaos. Heart doesn't need to pump so much, so more chaos, more pumping. Up here, if it's right, it's less pumping, less chaos, better functioning, less work. And then you'll actually get what they call, some of these people, more for less. Don't we all want that? More for less. Now, it's a good little line, but it depends on how you present that line after you say it, to how it ends up meaning, and then with time. So the longer you say that line, it's been around, and you still need to say it, well, there's a big problem why that line is still exists. And who is saying it? Obviously, that line needs to go higher. That line needs to go higher, right? And so I want to talk about people snapping. We all need psychology and stuff these days. We hear about it. As usually if you cause one problem, it causes another problem. People out of jobs, people doing this, people doing that. Now, when it comes to snapping, there is natural snapping. There is uneducated snapping. Means they didn't know something, so they snap, right? They didn't know something. You didn't have the Lord, right? Some things like that. And there's natural snapping, which is a snap of an outcome. So it's bound to happen. Newton's law, every action has an equal and opposite reaction, right? So when it comes to snapping, people get treated differently. Like here's a snap. A snap is where your friend stabs someone, and I've had this when I was growing up. Here's an example. When I was growing up, my brother went with another person named the same name as him, P&P, for a cruise on a motorbike that was shared. And because P&P did something stupidly, and turned on a steep hill and rolled and damaged the vehicle, everyone got punished because of PMP. Now, that happens because PMP can't fix the problem. So someone has to get a problem, someone has to release an anger, and that is and you have to punish something that you can't punish. And so they say no to everybody because then we punish them. We go, oh, now we miss out, and then PMP become a bunch of assholes to everybody else that now can't have what's there because of PMP, right? And then we keep getting that now with the law, right? The law keeps going, well, we're going to do this, and then now you're all going to suffer, and then wants us to attack each other until we fix it. No, we either get worse or become a bitch or we fix it, right? That's how laws are meant to work in certain ways. But they're getting used and abused when it comes to that area. But we keep getting the PMP outcome instead of perhaps, oh, hey, I'm going to fix it again. And the law can do this because they can print up money. This is where printing up money or a credit card can come in handy, but you've got to do it right. And the law's meant to say, well, I'm going to fix that motorbike. It's going to be back out in the share again. But you've lost your privileges, but I'll give it back to you once you repair it. It's like an insurance. So that means you pay for the damages. I'm happy to let you ride it again. Do you think that's fair, Emma? Yeah. And the law's meant to work for that. So the law pays for it now and then shows a point, right? And then you can fine them and they have a debt, which is part of the law, right? But once they pay it back, not only do they get their return back, which is their forgiveness, so they can get they don't have to pay it back and not get it and be punished even more. You can be beyond punished. That sometimes can be level 2 or 3, but sometimes people go straight to it. And that's when everything goes downhill because they're going straight to certain areas when they're not meant to because everything is a balance. There's a reason for everything, right? So I want to get to my next part without blabbing all day. If you want to know more, you can come and ask me in the future and I may do a whole story about that area for you. So let's get back to what I want to mainly talk about, which is snapping and why people snap and what's necessary and what's not necessary and when should be punished. And that's a fine line in the system today. The system punishes just the last outcomes and that you might not even be able to get the truth out as they've got to do things quickly, as they've already got other areas and other faults and problems in their area. And when you have all these faults and problems, you get everything, it just doesn't work. You get reality of what you are collectively, right? And if you're having wars and stuff, well, there's your outcome. And that's why we get called sinners. So I'm going to go back to actions. So we're born with ADHD, stuff like that, as psychology will diagnose over time of education. Before then, they used to say that ADHD people were fucking crazy, just violent people. They were violent because they just were. There was no reason why. They just are. A little bit like the gay thing, where they thought gay people were mentally ill. That was most of our human history of education most of the time. But recently it's not. But then recently we were sort of getting back to it. And in a way, if we haven't sorted a problem out, there is a mental problem there. Right? That's how I see it. Until a problem can be sciencely debated and ended, right? Which is what Donald Trump was meant to do as a leader, to help out him and his crew, as they're meant to work together to get the right answer. Otherwise, him and their crew can get a better one, will come in, right? And the people all want the best outcome, but if you have lazy people or people who don't really care and all that thing, you're also going to get that other problem, which is all part of it. Once that problem happens, that's Newton's law of what you're getting until you solve the top. And that's why wars happen and certain things got to happen because you got to go to the top to solve it. And if you can't, well, you're not going to solve the problem. So if you go to the top and it makes a new law on you and it's stopping you and all this, you're going to be stuck in that circle. I'm sorry. And so people are born with all these things. And then we have life. So what could make ADHD worse? Interrogate them. Yeah, I heard that if you get annoying, I do this. Woo. And we have these idiots. Woo. Now he's got ADHD, but we don't need this. Woo. But they're allowed to do it. It's a loophole. Woody. Yeah. Remember this as a kid? Mom. You know that kind of thing, Emma? Yeah. But they get older and they're still the same, right? Then they run to the law and lawyers and shit. So how do we stop that from happening if everything's so quick? You can't. And so there's another problem that lies within you, with your sin. And so the best way when it comes to psychology is why we have these. They're meant to help lead all these so they can make it all quicker. If they don't know, they're meant to have these guidelines, which is laws. But if the guidelines are wrong, they're not going to get nowhere. So if you can have judges make their own opinions, like they can say that literally science is not true, right? So they can, and what do you mean by that? Oh, hang on. Marijuana. Marijuana has been proven so many things. It's the best drug, it's better than alcohol, it wears off quick, has less bad side effects than a lot of drugs out there. Alcohol is one of the worst. You could have hangovers and it can come up clear and still have problems where you kill people, right? But marijuana is low on that scale. All marijuana has is the devil on its ass, as far as I'm concerned. If you read the Bible, it just picks on freedom, all right? And marijuana can give you a lot of freedom. And so it gets picked on in certain countries. And in these certain countries, they have these lawyers that I just talked about. They're not just, they're not fair. It just is. And when you have them, they're not fair either. And you're going to have that system. Right? And they'll go, you're not fair, and they live in an unfair system. They go, why do I work so much? I want to save my kids, but yet they're the problem of the problem. You see? Right? And so when it comes to humans, we've got to go back up to the psychology, is that we've got to make sure that we look at everything, and we usually have family, friends, but we've got to keep the truth. This society here keeps the ego mainly. Ego keeps the hiding things, they don't like to be embarrassed. But truth and godly people, they see embarrassing as learning, right? They don't. They just say, I'm just a geek at the school, and if they find out you said this, I'm going to smack your head in, right? So they don't stop. And so you could have all these issues. Then you have these people that make issues worse instead of making things better. And so when you see that happen, and so you see that in him, and then he didn't even, perhaps if that person doesn't snap at him, then walks away and snaps somewhere else, but then tries to go explain a story, it doesn't come out. It can't come out in the human thinking. It doesn't exist. They'll say he had mental issues, all sorts of things, to exist in their way of thinking, which is sad because there just is mostly in these areas. And so people would see, like right now, everyone lets out energy. We have moments where, like I said, that guy needs to let out energy. He already had an energy problem. He needs to use blah. He's got to do that a lot in his life. Now we had this idiot, right? And he just does that because he has another problem of he looks to that, right? And that's the negative. So you have the negative and then the positive, trying to heal and get through. It needs an energy release, right? Now, I was talking about tics earlier, right? Everyone has these tics. Some people have more tics than others. And tics can be, and our tics, we have that. Ego's a tic and everything's a tic, right? And if you don't control it, it gets out of control. But it doesn't mean you have the tic, doesn't mean you're going to be it. Right? So humans could already be judged as collective. Collectively, you're all showing this, so you're going to get judged. Right? It's your tic, and which is true. People get outcomes on that. But when it comes to chip packet tics, like chip packets, it's when someone moves a chip packet, fucking hell. And so I was looking at some stories, me and Emma, about tics, because I had a tic the other day where I felt like I get frustrated. When people get frustrated, they kick, they swing, they do things. But then when they get frustrated in that moment, which is what I was just talking about, you have these lefties that see it and go, you're crazy. But are they really? With the full education, they're not. So how are we going to get to this full education now? I'm speeding up a little quicker now because the phone's about to die. So I've got to quickly get to my point. And so when I go to release energy, I say to people, look, I don't hit women. I barely hit women. I might push them around like I haven't hit a woman like a man. Best way to put it. I've done some pushing, right, mainly. I've done some squeezing. I've only done what I've ever gotten done back to me from a woman. That's how I more likely see it, or what a woman could stand without being a bully, being a man, right? I don't like to bully people. And most of the time, I would never even approach it. That number is so small in my life from kid till now, right? And most of the women in that part of the section has been my sisters, grow up with sisters, right? And when you grow up with sisters, it also makes you a different man than one that doesn't, as you will see and treat women differently, as they treated you, right? And they like to use, I'm a weak woman, but yet I used to be smacked with the friggin' broomstick and all sorts of crazy shit from my sisters, right? Just because I wanted cereal, right? That's the life we grow up in. Some people do. As I've grown up, if I put a doll on the head of a tap and turned it on and all the arms blew off and did that a lot. My dad would come flying out, rip me out, and perhaps throw my head through the wall and shit like that to teach me a lesson, right? People go through that kind of stuff, right? But do they deserve to go through it? And in a way, they do learn a lesson, but shit, how hard of a lesson do you need to learn, right? And then once these people have gone through those lessons, what do you think they believe that you might need if they tried the peaceful talking way, but nothing works for them? Do you think that they might need the same lesson and then they go, shit, maybe I do deserve my head to go through the fucking wall because that got me to stop? You know what I mean? Or should they have tried another 10 more times or another way of approaching things, something else to put in there and things like that? It all depends on the education and the ability to do things, which is finance, right? And so when I go to release energy, I've always hit things. I go, fucking bang! As these stories say, when they had their ticks of a annoying sound, someone going, beep, and all this, they'd walk away and kick something. What's one of the stories that you read that someone did on a tick? What was the tick? You have to be quick because we haven't got one.
Punched a friend in the face.
Over?
A certain noise.
Over a noise. See?
Chewing gum.
Yep. And in the end, some people can heal through this too, which is why I try to teach, I'm not like you, that you need to sue someone because they said you ain't something. And in some cases, you can do something straight away. It's called discretion, right? The police have it when you're 2Ks over and all this kind of crap, right? I've just watched a clip, if you look up in your list, about discretion. But they rather use what they can. If they can, corrupted humans usually abuse, right? And so in some of these cases, they're right and then they're not right, aren't they, Emma? Like if the person ticked them off and knew about it, did they deserve the punch in their head?
I don't think anyone deserves a punch in the head over a noise, but...
No, listen. It's not about the noise. They knew if they made the noise that someone may just punch,
yeah.
then they deserve it, don't they?
Yeah, unless they accidentally forgot for a temporary second, but yes.
Could be, but yeah, it depends on how often they do it. This is fine line. But if they don't know, then, and someone's doing a packet in the seminar and then they go smack in the face, well, they don't deserve it, right? Because they don't know, right? But when people know, then sometimes people deserve that smack in the face, which is what I was talking about with Emma. And then some people get it and some people run off to mummy. Mummy! He's that kid I was just talking about. He punched me in the face. Yeah, but what did you do to get the punch? And you knew it was going to come, and when you did it, now you've been the trickery fucking sinner human. It's pretty sad, eh, people? But that's how we start to see things. Kids start to copy, and if they copy what you are, they'll show you what you do more often. And then they'll get better at it as society upgrades, you know how it is out there. And so when you see someone punch something and to release that energy, to me, if they're a person that punches things, if you can tick someone off and they'll take it out on a product or something else, then they're a pretty good dude and would be pretty safe to not be attacked. More than likely, it's super rare. What do you reckon, Emma?
I don't know, I guess it depends really, but...
Depends. Well, it depends on that. Now, let me continue talking. Now, you can have that, right? And she goes, depends on really, because you don't know when, if they're going to hit something, she's going to give me the stepdad theory. He told me that if I play with guns and use them a lot, then more likely I'm going to use it when I get older. Is that what you're saying, isn't that? Is why you said your answer. That if I punch a lot, that doesn't mean that I'm not going to punch.
Well, it depends on the person. That's what I'm saying, because some people do punch walls and they
I gave you the theory. When I asked a question here, I've got to explain. When I give you a theory, it's a theory. It's not meaning me and all that. And it's not meaning other things. It's part of that theory. That if you've seen a person that says, and you knew, that's what you got to listen. It's like they're trick questions. If you don't listen to them right, you don't. If you knew that that's all they did for 30 years, that's all they did up to that point, 10 years, but you knew that that's all they did, technically you could fire them up and should feel safe that that's what they would do. But then after a while, if you're a shit stirrer, so that's if they do it naturally. So you might see someone else stirring up, they do it. Then you stir them up, they do it. And so, right? And so it's not going to really come at you. But if you did it constantly like a shit stirrer, then you might get the other punch. Yeah. And you're getting yourself into a higher risk of that. But a lot of times those punches is a way of healing, of release. In fact, if they don't do that, they might have picked something else. It's like someone saying, instead of picking fuck, pick schmuck, right? Right? Instead of him going, I'm going to get you first, I'm going to pick this first. I picked this. There's an energy, if you ever get stirred up enough or felt certain ways, you feel this, it's adrenaline rush, but it gives you an energy, right? And you need to release it, right? And sometimes psychology can help it. It's not in the moment, that psychology. In fact, it might come in a quick moment, right? And we all have choices, and some people do bad choices at those moments of release of energy, which we were talking about with who deserves what. When someone deserves something, someone builds up an energy and they end up egging it on, they've got a high probability of copping it. But then the worst thing about this world today is that when that other person retaliates back, they lose. They get the liar effect. What do I mean by that? You know, when the secretary in that show goes, that it talked about her friend and the burglar. That's what we keep getting. The burglar was doing all wrong, but because the burglar found that one other little loophole, they jump on it. These lawyers, they jumped on the loophole of the injury, right? And he got to get that, and they didn't care about the rest. And that's the sad part, is that they're allowed to pick and choose lawyers to what they say to present to the judge, right? That's why I wasn't allowed to speak. As the judges will say, I need someone who can speak better or my language. And so a lot of times the judge could say that, and they've got the right to say that too. And they'll jump on that as much as they can if they want to. A good one wouldn't so much, but a corrupt one would, right? To stop people from able to do things or able to do things effectively. But a lot of times you shouldn't have to need a lawyer for anything. Speaking yourself is always the best truth. And if you believe you can and you go to do it and be understood, then you should. But a lot of cases, they don't allow us to do that, or they force us not to, which is sad because you get that bad outcome that I talked about earlier. So how do we solve these situations? Well, it takes stories and time and right laws. When you head the right way, eventually you'll head the right direction. But when you punish people for addictions or perhaps, and because they did it, you're going to stay in that circle. And that's the whole point of it, is that we all do things every now and then, but it depends on how you see it. Now, when you do a frustration thing, so when you damage something, if you damage someone else's stuff, it becomes more of a, you shouldn't do that. How quick can you replace it? You're putting someone out, so you've upgraded that a little bit. But when you damage your own stuff, that's a good way to release something. You'll even teach yourself a lesson, go, shit, because why you got to fix it or pay for it? Well, think about it. You'll think about that moment. That's what I do, right? After those moments, I go, well, fuck, I did it, released that energy, didn't like that, I could talk about it. Hopefully next time I won't do it. That's how you fight that energy. Go, hopefully it'll take longer, do less of it until it eventually goes away. And usually to get less of it is you get away from the problem or fix the problem, isn't it? Out there. Yeah, bam. And so I pretty much wanted to talk about how little things can lead up to big things because of certain issues that we have around us. But if we have things all around us that all work together in a better balance, then we'll have less of these issues where we need this doctor. You know what I mean? But have a good one. And the number one key is a little bit like I just said, and truth. If people can only get rid of that sin of envy and greed too much, you can have it a little bit. Everything's good to have. And you need to have it in a lot of ways to succeed in another area. But if you have too much of something in too many areas, you'll find that you'll fail, which is too much ego and all that, and just doing what you want to do because you can becomes a sin. What was that? Yeah. Oh, no, it's about to do it now, 29 minutes. And so I end up doing this clip anyway because I was just talking to Emma about what I'm going to do and what my job is. And if people are around me, they've got to expect certain things. And if they can't, well, that's how we change. That's why we talk. If your heart's really into something, that's when you see a relationship and people go, oh, I'm moving because I've got to go such and such. And either people go with them or they don't. That's a point in a relationship that you don't want to do too early because it's got to be a strong one to get the right answer, right? Sometimes people do it too early and they believe they should go with them and they waste a lot of time and a lot of problems, right? You got to find out if you really connect with each other in the nows. And people change too, not only naturally, but because of circumstances as well. Someone might have a sudden death in their family, and so they'll suddenly change in a certain way. to deal and coping with that death. But anyway, have a good one out there, and hopefully your tick's not too bad. We all had ticks. Trust me, I've got my ticks. Can you remember a couple of my ticks? Let Sam, I'll tell you a couple of my ticks. I don't have many, but what makes me tick?
Repeating.
Yeah, that's one of them I've talked about.
Put me on the spot now.
Not lying. Lying, I mean.
Yeah.
See,
You put me on the spot. I'm like, what the fuck? You put me on the spot. I can't think right now.
but I told you one of Emma's ticks. I'll leave it at that one with Emma at the moment. But one of her ticks too is that she don't like people knowing about her life too much too, which is understandable. But we try to put things in a way that it's normal, because a lot of ticks is normal. See, everything's balanced and everyone has a problem, and ticks is actually a part of connection, right? Someone might have a tick, but someone knows perfectly how to handle that tick and likes to do it. And if you like to do it, it's all part of finding the perfect man out there, which you don't, or the perfect woman, the perfect. But getting close to that, hey?
Plus my tick's a condition.
Condition, yeah. Your one was a born condition tick, that one too. The tick she was talking about is nature created ticks. So hers will always happen, and it always has when you're younger. Mine did. So there's different type of ticks there, isn't there?
Maybe not so much. It's just developed.
Yeah, some ticks can get better or worse. It's like a allergic reaction kind of thing, isn't it? They get better or worse, depends on how you approach them, of healing or having too much of it and all that kind of stuff. There is a fine balance in that area. I've noticed I end up getting the fine balance of mosquito bites where it looked like they were going to get worse, and then I naturally healed, and now I can get bitten and they're just like a normal mosquito bite the last 10 years or so. It took a while, but there you go. There's allergic reaction that doesn't get me anymore. Remember how I talked about that, the stories of my allergic reactions? But yet my banana one, it upgraded. And that's because I avoided bananas because of the problem. So what does that tell us? It doesn't give us a guarantee, but it gives us a little, maybe. No. But anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Have a good one and see you later. Let me know in comments what you think of this psychology and how I presented it. Did I present it to the most folk? Which is another way of best psychology, because psychology comes in different levels as well. That sits there in different levels, right? But you want the best to be up there, don't you? Which is what a lot of people use the Bible for. See you later.